Well, hello, and welcome back to the Baldwin Guitars YouTube channel. We've had a few requests from people who are interested in refinishing an old guitar that they have. In down economies like this, you don't always have the money to go out and buy a brand new guitar. So sometimes it makes sense to take something old out of your collection and freshen it up so that it motivates you to practice a little more. So that's what we did here with this PV Raptor EXP. We refinished this one in spray paint from Home Depot. We're going to go over and do a whole series here of different types of finishes you can use to refinish a guitar. But before we get too long-winded here, we're just going to go dive right into refinishing this guy. So our first step here is going to be to break the guitar down. So obviously we got to get the strings off, we have to get the pick guard off, we've got to get knobs and switch tips off. And basically we want to peel everything off of this thing so that we have a body that we can start sanding. So we'll go ahead and get started with that. Done, but now this guitar body is ready for some sandpaper and ready for some paint after that. So let's go ahead and head over to the sander and get started over there. All right, so here we are. At this point, we are ready to start painting. We are going to be doing a solid color on this, so that's why we didn't sand all the way back to bare wood. Sanding all of the finish off if you want to do a wood stained guitar look is going to be really difficult. Just because you have to take so much material off. So just prepare yourself for a lot of sanding. There is no such thing as building up paint to make up for scratches. If you have a scratch, it will show through in the final results. So make sure you, at this point, sand down to the level that you want it to, the level of smoothness that you want it to be when you're done. So if there's a big gouge here and you're thinking, oh, I'm just gonna put a whole bunch of layers of paint on that and sand it flat, never works. Don't try it. Sand it smooth now and then paint over it. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna put a handle on this, hang it from the ceiling. We're gonna spray a coat of sealer over top of it. The sealer that I use is from a company called Crystal-Lac. It's their Knot Shellac, K-N-O-T, shellac. Works great for guitars. At this point, if you have any imperfections in the surface, they will show through in the final result. So make sure you sand any scratches smooth, any dents, anything like that. If you are trying to sand back to bare wood, make sure there are no sanding marks in the bare wood. A lot of times it's tempting to go with a 50 or a 60 grit to get all the finish off of there. Well, that just means you have 50 or 60 grit scratches that needed to be sanded, that now need to be sanded out with 100 grit, 150, 220. And when I'm doing bare guitar bodies for brand new guitars, I actually sand to at least 320 to make sure that none of the imperfections in the actual surface show through in the final guitar. Also, we will be doing a satin finish. When doing a satin finish, you get to skip the step of polishing, wet sanding, level sanding, and polishing the guitar. Again, just for brevity in this video, we're going to do this quick and dirty and just make it as nice as we can without expending a lot of time, effort, and money. My painting rig. A lot of times you'll see on Instagram and other places, somebody's got some guitar attached to some spinny thing and it goes all around and it looks so cool. You don't need to worry about that. You tie a string to your ceiling, put an eye hook in the where your strap button goes, and then put a ring, tie a ring at the end of the string on the ceiling, and then it hangs, and you can hold it however you need to, and it's a very cheap and elegant solution to a very expensive problem that a lot of people have had over the years. So here we go. Next step here is to sand our body. You can't really see it from where you're at. It's hard to see in the light, but we have this little orange peel texture to this body with all this sealer on it. So we just need to sand that flat, and then we'll be ready for our first coat of color here. So I'm gonna go ahead and get started on that. The sandpaper I'm using is Super Acrylex flexible sanding sheets. I've got 600, 800, and 1200. The 800 and 1200 are a little much for what I'm doing right now, but I'm going to start with just 400 grit just from Home Depot, and then we'll hit the 600 here. You don't have to use the Super Acrylex. It just doesn't load up with gunk as much as the cheap Home Depot sandpaper does, so that's why I'm using that stuff. See if I can get this on video. If we're looking at the surface here, you can see the spots where we have sanded through the top layer, but there's still nice shiny pits. That's what we're talking about with our orange peel texture. So the plan here is to sand until all those glossy little low spots have been sanded flat. And that way we know we've got a flat surface that we can paint on. So that's what we're doing here with the sandpaper. 400, the 400 grit sandpaper may not be aggressive enough for what you're doing, depending on how bad your orange peel is. But you want to use the finest grit you can so that you don't sand through the layers you just sprayed. So here we go. Of color. So if you remember what that looked like with that orange peel, let's take a closer look here at what this surface looks like now. If you can see, there's very few pits. It's a very even surface, so none of that surface texture will be coming through on the color coat. Home Depot spray paint. This stuff does not dry hard. This stuff is not an instrument coating, but it will make your guitar a new color. So if you're looking for a high gloss, factory looking, guitar finish, this isn't the stuff to use. But if you've got a cheap guitar and you're just trying to, glow it up a bit, this is the guy. There's a lot of people that use automotive spray paints. I feel like by the time you spend the money on an automotive spray paint, you might as well just go buy the nitrocellulose from Stuart McDonald. It's a much more purpose-built coating than what you put on a car. So this says, based on a 70 to 50% relative humidity, we want to, it dries to the touch in 20 minutes, dries to handle in 1 hour, and fully dry in 24 hours. Apply a second coat or clear within 1 hour or after 48 hours. Apply clear in 2 to 3 light coats a few minutes apart. So, it doesn't give me a full cure time here, but it does say to wait 48 hours before we do clear over top of this. Or within 1 hour. So, let's give it a shot. So, here we are. It's been 2 days. And I knew this. I knew when we started, this is a horrible idea. Don't just use Home Depot spray paint. Just don't do it. It's awful. So what happened was, it seemed like when we were painting it with the Home Depot spray paint, there was some sort of texture or something in the paint itself. It came straight out of the can. And now we have this texture on the surface of the guitar. So one of the other problems is this paint doesn't get very hard. So when you go to sand it, you melt it and it loads up onto the sandpaper and you get these little tiny pills on it and it's a nightmare. So now what we're having to do is try and sand this flat and praying that our satin clear has no texture in it when we spray it, and try and get one last coat to lay down flat for us. And after that, the only hope we have is hand sanding to like 1500 or 2000 grit to get a nice satin finish on this. With good paints, they're gonna harden to the point that you can sand them and buff them. This, not gonna happen. So, here's the next step. So if you're going to use Rust-Oleum or another cheap spray paint, you're going to have to sand very slowly. If you're sanding by hand, you just have to go real slow and plan on taking forever. Also, if you're going to use an orbital sander, there's no way. It's just going to get bogged down by sandpaper. Now, you will see I was using this guy. This is for cleaning sandpaper. So you can get this Harbor Freight for like $4. So if you want to use an orbital sander, sand for 10 seconds and then clean it off for a minute, and then sand for 10 seconds and clean it off for a minute, and you might be able to get through it this way. But we're going to put another clear coat on this and pray that it works. We'll be back. So, we clear coated the body. It might turn out okay, maybe. But next is to take the pick guard and make it look like brand new. So what we're gonna do is go clean it off, put it in some peroxide, stick it in the sun, and see what happens. So here we are. We have put the guitar back together. We let it cure for about a week, and my impressions of this are spray paint from Home Depot isn't the greatest. It's not meant for instruments. The paint, the color coat, as it was coming out, had some texture in the actual paint, and that made it really difficult. So we had to do a few different coats of scuff sand and then clear to get it to be somewhat smooth. There's still a little tiny bit of orange peel in this. You're not going to notice it unless you look really close. So because of that, I wouldn't recommend doing this on any guitar that has any sort of significant value to it. Low level Squires and Epiphones maybe, and then off-brands, the beginner stuff that you'd pick up at a big box store is probably just fine for Home Depot paint, or Lowe's or Menards or wherever you're going. So I like it. My wife loves the color. She wants to play it now, so we've done our job. If you're glowing up a guitar, really the only reason you're doing it is to make you like the guitar more and make you want to play more. So as long as it does that, awesome. So go play guitar, my friends.